Welcome, nerds. Today I have something special for you. We are going to have a look at the interview with Ajja done by Yatra Festival. This is, of course, a great way to learn from one of the big masters of psychedelic trance. You can enjoy it together with me, and I will offer some commentary about the stuff that he says. Without further ado, let's get this going.
Namaste, family.
Namaste.
Yeah, we are here at Yatra Festival with Ajja, somebody I've been trying to find the time at many festivals to actually be able to meet and have a little discussion about creativity, inspiration, and finally it's happening. So thank you very, very much for accepting to be a part of this. Yes.
Nice to be here.
Oh, lovely. So could you please introduce yourself to us and our viewers, please?
My name is Ajja. I'm from Switzerland and I make psychedelic trance. What more to say? I'm a musician, not just an electronic musician. I've been a musician all my life and I've been exposed to this particular type of music very young because I grew up in India when I was small. So this is something that's quite close to my heart.
Oh, that's lovely.
I can relate to that because I got my first psychedelic trance album with, I believe, when I was like around 12 years old, because lots of my siblings, or two of my siblings, were deeply into psychedelic trance in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I got my first taste before I actually went to parties myself. I can totally relate to that.
Lovely.
I wouldn't say I've always liked it. That's another story sort of thing, but I've been around it a long time.
I would like to know your story so far, like, because I know you're an artist, tattoo artist in your journey. So how did that whole thing flow into where you are now?
Well, like I say, my first memories are Baga Beach, and then Anjuna Beach was later when I was a teenager. But my father was a traveling tattooer, so
yeah. It's actually one of the great tattoo families, the Le family Iron. Like his brother Philip Le, for example, is somebody incredibly famous in this community. Similarly to Ajja himself in the psychedelic trance community, almost like a bit of a star in the tattoo community. And also, if you want to get a tattoo from Philip Le, I think it's quite hard. Like, long waiting list, if at all you can make it on the waiting list. As far as I understood, I myself was together with a great tattoo artist, with a girl many years ago, but for a quite long time. And that's why I also know about that, because, yeah, he's somewhat of an icon. His brother is. And he himself also tattoos.
I'm the youngest of four siblings, and the deal my father made with my mother was that he was okay having children, but he didn't want to change his lifestyle. Right. He wanted to keep traveling. So I grew up traveling.
Wow.
So that's the basic thing of where this creativity comes from, is I was very lucky to have artistic-minded parents that always taught me that I could be whatever I wanted. Everything was okay. If I ended up working in quote-unquote a regular job, that was totally fine. But that there was alternative solutions if I wanted to.
Wow.
So I was encouraged from a very young age to do something artistic. I picked music because my brothers and sisters were doing artwork, drawing and tattooing, and it looked very difficult, so I thought music was a lot easier.
Yeah.
So I went into that, and I was encouraged. As long as I was always doing something musical, I wasn't bothered so much to be doing household chores, this sort of thing like that. So in a way I was manipulated into it, but in a good way. And then when I was a teenager, my father told me to leave the house for a few months and not to come back, to go play in the streets as a street musician.
Wow.
As a learning sort of experience. So again, it taught me really young that you could have this exchange of energy with people where you do something creative that you like, you give it out into the world. Some people will think it's shit, they won't like it at all. Some people will really like it, and there'll be a return of energy which takes the form of money in some cases, but takes the form of, love, attention, all this sort of thing. What you're giving out, you get back. So that's the general sort of story of creativity, but specifically to what I'm doing now as an electronic musician with psychedelic trance.
Yeah.
I was in Goa at the end of the 70s, the beginning of the 80s, then again at the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s, when there was the crossover between electronic music, body pop, what was techno at the time, all these sort of people that started taking other people's music and making remixes where they would chop out all the vocals and just sample little bits of them and make these really weird sort of stuff that was very dance oriented. And I lived through it, but I was a guitar player at the time. My friends, they were all either DJs or their fathers were DJs. So there was this whole connection to it, but I didn't like it at the time. I didn't. Obviously, it was going into my brain, but it wasn't something.
That is quite surprising to hear that he didn't like it. I would have not expected that one. But yeah, he was into playing guitars and stuff, as he still is. And crazy. It's like very interesting to hear all that stuff. It's a lot of extra info.
Something that I connected with, because for me it was too basic. That was the way. For me, a musician had such finesse in everything.
Absolutely.
You know, there's always the thing that it's something I've been told that I believe is that the closest connection you can have with another human being through music is with your voice, because you're giving your emotion into a vibration that other people connect with, and then you go through an instrument, and then it depends how proficient you are with the instrument.
Right.
That's why the Jimi Hendrix and all these sort of people had a really good connection, because they were so fucking good at it.
They could speak through it.
They were speaking through it. But then here you came to electronic music, and suddenly you had this kind of barrier in a way. And at the time, the machines were a lot more limited. You didn't have laptops and sample banks and all this sort of stuff, you know, and all these sort of things. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was a totally different time. It was just coming up. Late 90s, you had the first virtual analog machines that were quite powerful from Nord, as for example, the Micro Modular and the Modular series in general. And you had VST being developed as a standard, and also Waves coming out with the first very, very important products. This is just like some side info. So digital was coming up indeed. SX was a thing. Cubase SX was a thing. The mother of all DAWs, of course, as we all know, hopefully. It's like Cubase was the first DAW from which all other DAWs were birthed after that. But it was all a lot more simple in a way, and lots of technology like Splice, for example, which is a totally technology-based product, which brought advancement to the music production field through technology, through their app and Splice Bridge, and also how the whole company is set up. One of the biggest audio production companies in the world now, with a huge market cap and worth a lot of money by now, and started with only a minimal investment. Okay, it's maybe a little bit of a tangent that I'm going on, but yes, the times were simpler indeed in a way, for sure. A different time, completely different time. The beginning era of digital music production as we know it. Laptops existed, VST existed, and so forth, but they were in its infancy, of course.
Yeah, so it's quite funny, because now, as I've evolved in this world, I've met a lot of these people that were making the music that I listened to as a child, and I've gone back and I've dug through and found all these songs, and now I really appreciate them for what they were with the tools at the time. The amount of themselves that they actually managed to put into it is quite uncanny, actually. But yeah, so for me, it wasn't my thing for a long time, until quite late in life, until when I was in the mid-20s. I had a life situation where I had a need to party once again, because I had lots of father dying, I'd split up with my ex-wife, lots of things to work out. Right. And I was tattooing a friend of mine who is Gaspar, he's a DJ at the time. And I was doing these big
I know Gaspar I know him not very well, as if it would be my best buddy, but I connected with Gaspar from Sangoma Records when I was playing on a big party in Brazil. And then afterwards, actually, I shared some stuff about the Wim Hof method that I was doing, and he started to do it, and was giving him great results. He's a super, super sweet guy.
Tribal arms on him. So I said, I need to party, take me to a party. So he took me to small parties in Switzerland, and I encountered this music again, and I was like, wait, it's the same thing that I remember from a child, but the complexity had evolved. There's layers, there's all these things, and so I got interested in it, in making it, and obviously at that time I was going out to parties and experiencing it all again, as if like having a second teenagerhood, if you put it that way, sort of thing. So I was experiencing it, listening to it, having these links back to what I remembered as a child, and putting all my musical knowledge into it together, ended up with where I am now. But the thing is, me and my friend Gaspar, we started making music, but we actually did something that was, we were trying to make what we were hearing, what other people were doing, but we kind of fucked it up, because at the time music had a big kick, and it still does. If you listen to it and you zoom out a bit, it goes rum da da rum da da rum da da, big kick and small bass and big basses. We didn't get that. We made small kicks. So we made small kick and 3 basses. So we made da 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 da. So we kind of pioneered this style where it was less focused on the big kick and more focused on an actual vibration that sustains people.
Absolutely.
So, but it's funny that we didn't realize it until 10 years later. Looking back at it, once we learned how to do the other way, we were like, oh, that's what happened. It was actually a mistake, because we didn't have YouTube or tutorials or all this sort of stuff. We got high in the studio. That's what we did. And we used our brains to try and figure out how this was done, by listening to stuff, trial and error. And the funny thing, what I realized is, when you get into this thing, simplicity is key. When you're very high and you get debilitated by whatever's going on, you can't make lots of complicated stuff. And we were looking for this magic ingredient that is not fucking there. What's there is your personal feeling, your emotions, your vibration, what you're doing, translating through a machine, which is your brain, working through these things, making something that other people are going to listen to and that you're going to use as a tool on a dance floor. But one other thing I just wanted to say about this is, I didn't get into this thing. Programming. I hate programming. We recorded stuff. And that's a
yeah, I agree. Like now he's talking about something like direct record, which I'm a big advocate for, which is basically like directly playing and recording synthesizers over your material, like basically as it has been done for decades and decades and decades in studios. It's a very, very classic technique that got a little bit lost in the digital era.
Quite a big difference, and it's something that links back to a lot of the early tracks. They were played
almost acoustic style.
People would set them up on sequences that were sequencing into like synthesizers and samplers, but then they were all running into a mixing desk. If you look at Hallucinogen, Phosphor, and all this sort of stuff, he mixes every mix. He doesn't go back and actually turn something down by 2 dB. Either was a good mix or it's fucked, sort of thing. So, and that's a concept that I brought from funk and rock and all this sort of stuff into electronic music. Record takes. If you're in a good feeling and a good vibration, you get something good. If you don't, oh well, chuck it away and then make something good later on that you might like. So try and keep the humanity. That's the way of doing it.
So that whole thing that you spoke about, like the power of the voice being so important for evoking emotion, in the same way you started recording samples instead of producing it through synths to keep, and it actually kept that human touch.
Or even if it's a synthesizer, play the synth and record it at the same time, and then listen to what you have. And generally, if you're, I mean, these days I'm not high in the studio. It's not something that you have to do. It's not something I would even recommend for most people to do as a way of learning how to do this. But if you are in that state and you're doing it, you're listening to a rhythm that you're producing and you're playing something over it, you're going to make something that naturally fits.
Because you're going with it.
This is certainly one of the biggest advantages, is that if you are, for example, let's say, record a lead in isolation without the actual material, then, you know, obviously it's like it will not 100% fit. You will have to do something to it after the fact to make it fit in that case, which is totally possible if you have the skill in processing. But it's a big point that I'm always hammering home with all my students and everybody. It's like direct record is the way to go. Also, if you have that surplus of processing power in 2025 and beyond, it still is the right thing to do in so many cases. And it's also a great way to get bread on your butter really quickly.
So that's the idea of it. And then it's made for people that are going to be listening to it, trying to get, even if they're not on a substance themselves, it's that particular head state that they're trying to actually trigger, that they're trying to get to. One of the biggest compliments I get after playing a live set is, and it happens quite a lot, is people that don't take anything anymore, that had amazing experiences when they were younger, and then they got a message, like a lot of us do, where you don't actually need to do it constantly.
No.
That's not the point. The point is to get something out of it that helps you in your life, that actually makes you aware of this universe, this world, what's around you, what's going on, and to integrate it. Integration is more important than blasting your brains out, sort of thing. So a lot of people, when I'm doing this, they actually come back and they say, look man, this helped me get back into the same state. I don't trip anymore, I don't do this stuff, no. I had a really fucking good time. And for me, that's a huge honor. That's what the goal is.
This is one of the main things that I'm trying to talk about through this.
All right, I think that this is an excellent moment to finish off part 1, potentially, of this video. If you did enjoy it, absolutely smash that like and leave a comment, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel. This is Audionerdz, I'm Parandroid, and you can also, of course, visit our website, check out our courses, our merch, etc. It's Audionerdz with a Z.net. Audionerdz with a Z.net. One more time, www.audionerdz with a Z in the end, .net. I see you guys in the next video. Let me know if you enjoyed it and if you want to see a continuation of this thing that I was doing here. I think it's super inspiring to listen to Ajja here. See you guys in the next one. Peace out.